Welcome to the 25th Hour podcast, where busy business owners share their secrets to how they stay in control of their day and on top of their time. Today's guest is Attorney Jennifer Corso. She represents Cleveland area employers in labor and employment law for over 25 years. She has a proactive approach when it comes to employment matters, innovative strategies, and top-rate advocacy in defending employee claims. Her work ranges from employee handbook drafting and legal review, employee and supervisor training, to employer representation in workers' comp and unemployment claims, to legal defense of harassment and discrimination claims in state and federal courts. What all of that means is that Jennifer has the unique ability to be able to look at what are you doing from both a legal perspective and HR best practice perspective, and then give you advice on the front end on how to streamline, change, adapt your practices to save you time and money on the back end so that something doesn't happen. I love that our philosophies are so in tune. Do it right in the beginning to save you a ton of hassle in the end. So listen in and hear how she helps clients save time and money. Plus, she shares a secret that she uses to help herself save time. Today's guest is Jennifer Corso, and I am super excited that you had the time in your schedule to join us today. So welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Lisa. Happy to be here.
Good. We were talking a little bit before we started the recording, and Jennifer has an amazing business. And we're going to jump into her business in a second. But first, I want to just talk about, what do you do? What do you do? Because you balance a business, you balance being involved in multiple organizations, you balance caring for your mother. Like, there's a lot going on in your life right now, yet you do get it done. So what are some of the strategies that you use to be able to get things done?
Well, I'm sort of lucky because I do a lot, but also I have less on my plate than a lot of women in the same position. I have to tell you, once we all went to working from home back in March with COVID, and I started hearing the horror stories about, people trying to do Zoom calls with kids screaming in the background or, husbands across the table or this or that. I have said this so many times. I have never been so happy in my life to be single and child-free. So it came back to my benefit over these last several months with working from home and having the home to myself. Even my cat leaves me alone on Zoom calls. It's really strange. Today I'm in my office. So I'm involved in a lot of organizations, but I'm lucky where my time is almost completely my own to schedule. I don't have to balance so many competing interests, like so many women, who have families and children and everything. I have an elderly mother that, time comes into play with that. And it's been strange, though, less time since COVID, since you can't go visiting senior residences these days. But it's, in normal life, it is a balance. But I like it. I have learned long ago to say no. And I love that adage that no is a complete sentence. And I have passed that along to many people in my life. So if somebody wants me on a board, I can say, no, I've got too much this year, but I'm going off of this other board next year. So I'd be happy to join you then. Or one time when I joined a board, I said, I will say yes on the condition that you don't ask me to chair anything for a year. I need a year without that. I'll sit on a committee, but don't put me in charge of anything for a year. So I learned long ago to set boundaries when it comes to my time and to say no to certain things. And I think that's what helps.
Right. Well, and it's about choices.
Yes. Yes.
And, like you started with, well, I'm in this position where I don't have as many obligations as other people. You do. They're just different.
Well, yeah.
Your obligations look different.
Right. But my obligations don't have to be fed and clothed for the most part. And if I ignore them, the cops aren't going to haul me away for abuse or neglect. So,
Exactly. There is that.
There is
there is
that. Okay, I have to feed the cat. But so it is a little different, and but you're right. It's all choices and things of that sort.
Right. And one of the favorite things that I say to my clients is no is a complete sentence.
Mm-hmm.
You do not have to defend it. Don't feel guilty about saying it.
Yeah.
Your boundaries are your own. And when you hold them, you're designing your life versus someone giving you the life they want you to have.
Yeah. Yeah. That's absolutely true. And I think that's great. So I can't agree more with that. And I do say it a lot. No is a complete sentence.
Yes. Use it. Please use it. Use it often.
Yes.
So let's shift a little bit to your business. You're in your office now.
Mm-hmm.
And what I appreciate about the work that you do is I feel as if it is similar in concept, though not in actual content to the work that I do. We both help people save time. So how do you do that? What do you do? How do you help people save time?
All right. So I am an employment law attorney and I work with small businesses. So most of my clients are under 100 employees. A lot of them are under 50. So many of them don't even have that trained, educated HR person in play. They have the office manager / bookkeeper / payroll / HR, and usually those people are excellent and very experienced office managers and bookkeepers. But the HR part, a lot of them are just making things up as they go along, to be quite honest. So with time management from a business perspective, being in legal compliance in all aspects of your business is part of time management. And being in legal compliance is a time suck up front, at least. It truly, truly is. But it sort of fits in those old adages that we just don't really hear anymore, that the stitch in time saves 9 and an apple a day keeps the doctor away, and those types of things. Because it's true. You put the time and the effort, and I'm going to say yes, the money up front, and you set yourself up right. And it will save you so much time and money down the road. And this is true, not just in employment law, of course, but like in business law. If you don't incorporate, right, and if you don't do if you don't have a partnership agreement, and if you don't have an operating agreement and things like that, then when you need to separate with that partner or sell your business, it's going to be a mess. It's going to take you a lot more time and cost you a lot more money down the road. It's sort of like with a house. If you keep your house maintained and clean and up to date, when you go to sell it, you're ready to sell, but otherwise you're going to be scrambling when you need to or want to sell your house and trying to do 20 years of work in a month,
Right.
And
Right.
It's like that. It's keeping your house in order. So I do the same thing on employment, and it comes into many different plays. So, we're talking about legal compliance. Are you doing wage and hour right? There's a lot of record keeping involved with employment issues. And a lot of people, honestly, don't care, and they don't do it because they're like, well, who's going to care? Who's going to notice? Why do I need to do this? Well, if one of your employees claims that they weren't paid right, and they file a lawsuit, and the first thing, lawsuits are document heavy. They come back and they say, I want all your wage and hour records. Yeah, I want all your timesheets for your employees or for this employee. And if you don't have them, I've got a great example where it's been about maybe 5 years ago, I had a client who I hadn't heard from in easily 5 years call me up, and they had a Department of Labor investigator show up on their doorstep and say, we received a complaint that you're not paying overtime correctly. We're here to do an investigation, and handed him a list basically saying, here's all the documents I need you to gather in the next week. And this employer was a contractor of sorts. So he had, employees on crews in vans that usually went out in groups of 3 or 4 to specific jobs, either residential or commercial. And he paid them by the job, which is legal. You can do that, but you still have to have the record keeping. And so he didn't have anybody punching in or punching out, which is legally required. You have to maintain daily and weekly time records of employees. So he comes to me with all this, and I'm talking to him, and I knew he had the vans. And I said, do you have GPS records or GPS trackers on the van? And he said, yeah. And I said, do the vans stay at a guy's home, or do all the guys come to the shop, load in a van, and then go to a job? He says, they all come to the shop and load in a van. And I said, you need to call your GPS provider. So his GPS provider printed out records for all the vans, every day, every movement, every time record for 2 years. It was a stack of papers about this tall. And then he went through it, but then I still had to go through it. So he spent 2 weeks. Well, luckily we got an extension from the Department of Labor on how to, time to respond. And we were very lucky. They accepted those records. And even luckier, it proved he didn't owe an hour of overtime to any of the guys on his crew. But it took weeks to go through those records. And my bill was probably, I'm guessing, at least 3 times as much it would have been if he said, yes, I have them punch in and out, and I can have those records printed out by my payroll department. And I would have had a stack of maybe 10 or 20 pieces of paper. So huge. And the funny thing on this is that 5 years or so before, he had an issue, and I spotted this lack of time record keeping. And I told him then, you're doing it wrong and you need to change. And when we were talking this time around, I'm like, didn't we have this conversation? And he just sort of looked down. He's like, yeah, you told me I was doing it wrong then. And I said, somewhere in the fine print in my engagement letter is a little line that says I'm allowed to say I told you so. There you have it. So that's it's a very good example, but with a great ending.
Right.
I've had similar cases where the ending wasn't so great, and it's very hard if employers aren't keeping these records and get challenged with a lawsuit on it. So, wage and hour records are the number one thing. If there's anything you want to make sure you're doing right, it's your wage and hour practices, that you're paying overtime and you're paying wages correctly and you're keeping those records, because it will save you so much time and money in the end.
Right. It's the time invested on the front end to set up the system.
Yeah.
So that you're saving time and money on the back end. And it's like delegating.
Yeah.
Like people like, oh, I can't take this off my plate because I don't have time to train someone. I don't have time to blah, 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 blah. And I was like, there's a tipping point. Mm-hmm. You invest that time up front and then boom.
Right.
You're
and
saving
this is
time
one of these things, minimum investment. I mean, we're talking, if he just had a sheet of paper that he copied out, one guy a week, put it on a clipboard in every van once a week. We're talking minutes. And that sheet of paper just has to say name, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, clock in, clock out, off for lunch, any other time off the clock, sign at the bottom, you turn it in for the week.
You're bringing up this visual for me. When I worked at a high school, I used to have to sign out the van, take kids one place or another. Mm-hmm. And there was the clipboard right in the van. The insurance card was there. The gas card was there. And you signed your name, where you were going, and when you returned.
And as everybody's saying now, there's an app for that. If you don't want to do it on a clipboard, you can pay for an app. There's so many choices, but we're not talking heavy time investment for stuff like this. So, so that's sort of like the number one legal compliance. On top of that, there's a lot of HR best practices is what I call employee handbooks. Are they legally required? No. Is it a really good idea to have them? Yes. How do they save time? They communicate the rules. They tell people, here's what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to do it, and don't do X, Y, and Z. And if you do X, Y, and Z, you're going to be disciplined up to including discharge. So that takes a little bit more time than just creating a timesheet on a piece of paper. But again, if you need to discipline somebody, if you need to terminate somebody, and that's challenged, then it saves so much time because you can point to the rule. It's in writing. They receive the handbook because look, I've got this handy dandy piece of paper that says acknowledgement and receipt form, and they signed it, because we have personnel files and these things are kept in the personnel files. So it's just, there's all these little things, but again, it just saves so much time in the end when you can pull it out. And that way you don't have to prove, I told everybody. Okay, well, who was in the room with Joe when you told him? These 10 other employees. Okay, now we have to depose them all, or we have to get affidavits from them all, to prove that you told everybody and Joe was in the room when you told them, So, I mean, that's insanity if that's what you have to do to prove that you told people a certain rule, instead of just having it in writing. So,
and who would you recommend is the person who is pushing this initiative forward? Like just say the handbook, for instance, making sure people are signing them, making sure you have records, even creating it on the onset. Like, how does that look?
So it can come from a number of sources. So it can come from a source like me. Let's say a new client hires me on because they've got a workers' comp claim that's just going off the rails. And at some point in time, I say, well, I need to see your on-the-job injury policy. Oh, well, we don't have one. Do you have a handbook at all? No. Okay, we're going to want to talk about that once we get done with this issue. So it can come from me. It can come from me because I do employment audits. So a client with no problems can bring me in and say, I want you to review everything we're doing regarding employment stuff and make sure we're doing it right. It can come from an HR person. I've had new clients come into me because HR people that I've worked with in prior jobs they move jobs, they come to a new company. Maybe they're the first HR person that they've ever really had. They've graduated from that office manager and now they've got enough employees, they want an HR person. And I've had HR people call me and go, oh my God, I just started a new job on Monday and they're doing nothing right. We need you. Help. And so maybe that HR person will do the handbook and then they'll call me in for legal review, or sometimes people they see something on the TV, they read an article, they go to a seminar, they go to a chamber of commerce meeting, and these things come up and it starts going click, click, click. I don't have that. I think I need that. How do I get that? So I do handbooks, HR consultants do handbooks. I just think you need to have somebody who is very educated and trained and even if an HR consultant does it, I do always recommend legal review. And if you've got a good HR consultant doing it or a good HR person in-house, that legal review is maybe an hour time, so it's not a lot. But again, there's a little time and money involved there. So
right. On the front end, to save you so much time on the back end.
Yeah.
Tell me more about your audit. Because to me, that seems to really fall in line with this idea of invest it up front before there's a problem to save it on the end, time and money.
I really enjoy, and I got to tell you, I am putting it out to you and any of the listeners. If anybody can come up with a better word than audit, please let me know, because God, I hate that word. But it is what it is. I need a marketing person to find me a better phrase for it. So what I do is I go into a company, and it's usually a brand new client that I don't have a lot of information for. I give them a homework assignment before I get there. And when I say get there, this was in olden times, pre-COVID. I would actually go on site, and I still prefer to do that if I can do it safely. So I may go after hours because I want to see your postings. I want to see where you have information. I want to see where files are kept. So there is an actual real reason for me to go on site. Is it 100% necessary? No, but there's a benefit to both sides for it. So I give a homework assignment, and I basically give them a list of about 10 things that here's what I need. You can either send it to me beforehand, preferably email, or have it their hard copy when I get there. So it's things like, I want to see your job application. Let's start with point one of the hiring process. I want to see your job application because I have seen ones that are 30 years old, and I am not joking. You can tell we're on a mimeograph.
Oh, no.
You and I know what that is.
I know.
I actually saw one of those and I'm like, this is like a Xerox of a mimeograph. This is scary. And it did ask like your age and what church do you attend and do you have children and all these questions that were still illegal 30 years ago. They've been illegal since the late 60s. So for almost my entire life, they've been illegal, but yet people still ask them on job applications. So I want to see job application. Do you have an offer letter? Because I want to make sure it's not forming a contract. Do you have a non-compete? So what is the stuff that people see before their day one or on day one? I-9 forms. So many employers, Lisa, think of the last time you were actually employed by somebody other than yourself. Right. And if you remember on your first day of work, you had to show up with your driver's license or your passport and prove you were you and you were eligible to work here. The I-9 form has been around, again, as long as I've been practicing. But so many employers don't realize they exist. So, do you have that? So I want to see all these things. I want to see the employee handbook. Now, I'm not going to review the employee handbook during the audit, but I will flip through and I can get a sense for, are you in good shape? Does it need to be tweaked? Does it just need, some revisions here and there? Or do we throw the whole thing out and start over? Do you have job descriptions? I love job descriptions. And job descriptions are the biggest time saver out there. Oh my God. And next to wage and hour stuff. And this isn't, job descriptions aren't legal, but you can tell I love job descriptions. So oh my God. So if you have a job description, this is how it saves you time. So basically you use it when you're posting the job. So I know what job I'm posting. You use it when you are interviewing for the job. So you're creating your interview questions. So this job, you are required to do X. Have you ever done X? You are also required to do Y. Have you ever done Y? Tell me about when you've done Y. Tell me what you like about Y. Things of that sort. You just form your questions from that. And that way, you're asking the same questions of everybody, which again is good legal compliance. When you do a performance review, you go to the job review. Okay, now we know what we're measuring you on because we know what the job description is. All right. Discipline, termination. What is on the job description that they're not doing or not doing right? So it's something else to point to if that discipline or termination is challenged. It's on the job description. Somebody can say, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. It's on the job description, And then also for defending unemployment claims, wrongful termination claims, they come in handy, believe it or not, for workers' compensation. I mean, one piece of paper that will take you, honestly, it probably takes about an hour, to come up with a really good one, review it, make sure it's okay. And then it's a living document. It has to change as the job changes.
Thank you. Like, that's the piece right there. Because I also love job descriptions. Like, you're saying this, and I was like, I used to feel I was kind of weird because I love job descriptions, but I found my person who loves them too. When it comes to looking at what's your zone of genius, what are the things you're really good at? What are the things on your plate? The job description is a great place to go back to, yet it very seldom matches what the person is actually doing. Because like a lot of the clients I work with, they started with, say, a staff of 12, then they lost a couple people, added a couple people, but while they didn't have people there, they went down to a staff of 8. People kind of picked up more work. Then they added another person. And so some of that work shifted. And so the work that the person A is doing is not the work person A was necessarily hired for. They've picked up a couple pieces here and there. And then we sit down to look at, okay, well, what are the things you should do and the things that probably someone else should do? I'm like, let's start with the job. I'm like, oh, I haven't seen that in 3 years and I'm not doing what's on that.
Right. It should come out every year with the performance evaluation. Okay. So at a performance evaluation, you should look at the job description, both the employer and the employee, and you should say, okay, is there anything on this piece of paper you are not doing? Let's start there. And the question is that right or not? Now, it could be because, we hired a new person, they took off the top 3 things, or maybe technology took something away. Or maybe business declined and took something away. You don't know. But there's good reasons why you're not doing something. Right. It doesn't necessarily mean because somebody's doing something wrong or not doing their job. So, okay, so we need to take those off. Is there anything you are doing that's not on this piece of paper. Okay. And let's talk about why. And should you be doing that? And so again, the job description gets updated. You do the same thing with the employee handbook. There should be no policy in an employee handbook that an employer is not following and willing to follow. And if you find something that you're not following, then the question is do we take out the policy or do we change the practice?
Right.
So it's not that it's necessarily wrong. You just want to have reality, being reflected on that piece of paper. So yeah, I'm so glad you love job descriptions too.
Jennifer, what are some other red flags that you see when you're performing an audit?
One of the big things I see, and again, this is why I like being on premises if possible, is I ask them, I want to see where your personnel files are kept, physically where they are kept, and not just point to a room, but I want to see a file cabinet. And ideally, what I want to see is a file cabinet with a lock, for which they actually have a key, and they use the key, in a room that also has a lock, that they have a key and they use the key. So locked file cabinet, lock room. And the reason I say this is I have had several issues over the year with clients where after hours, an employee has actually gone to the file cabinet where the personnel files are kept and pulled things out. It could be disciplinary warnings so that they can't prove that they were disciplined. It could be, and I've had this, 3, 4, 5 times at least, non-competes. I've had employees go in unlocked personnel files and pull non-competes out. And they quit the next day and they go work for a competitor because they knew exactly what they were doing.
Right.
And the employer can't prove they have a non-compete because it's not there. So locked file cabinet, locked room. And if you want to be even more careful, especially with things like non-competes, scan them in and have them somewhere on a secure server backup, somewhere that employees don't share your computer password with employees. Had a client do that too. That type of stuff. Again, huge time saver in the end. So
I feel like you could write a book. Yeah. I had a client who did this.
Yes. I actually have a book in mind. I'm going to tell you, I just don't need to get off topic for just a second. My book is, what I say a lot of times is happy employees don't sue you. If you want to save time on employment lawsuits, don't be a jerk. Okay. Be a good person and you will solve most problems that way. But that would be part of it. Happy employees don't sue you. And this would be part of that book. Yes.
Right there. That's the title, I think.
Yes, it is the title. The subtitle is Don't Be a, and then I know what I wanted to say, but I'm not sure which word I'm really going to use in the end.
Right. Instead, it's just a bunch of asterisks.
Yes.
Characters.
Is it 3 asterisks or 4 asterisks? I'm not sure. I love an organization chart because it helps me prove when somebody says, Joe says, well, Mary was my boss. Mary's not your boss. Mary's over here on the organizational chart, and you've got 3 levels in between you or something like that. Yes, Mary may have been in charge of a project that you were involved in or something like that, but it just helps establish a chain of command and make things very clear. And again, it's a living document, so you want to make sure everything is all good with that. But yeah, I never knew we were like soulmates on these things.
I know. Who would have thought? All right. So we looked at your personal way of getting things done, which is to have strong boundaries. Awesome. And then the work that you do with clients, which is to help them make sure that they are in legal compliance, and then also save time because they're in, and this is not the right phrase, but HR compliance, like they're following HR best practices.
Exactly. HR best practices is how I put it. So
they're following HR best practices. And so when you're able to do these things and your clients are able to do these things, we get what's called the 25th hour. It's that extra hour that you get in the day. How do you like to spend yours?
Okay. So when I have seriously nothing to do or nothing I want to do, and this is more on a personal tack than business, of course, I am a puzzler.
I did not know that.
You know how like puzzles became the big thing as soon as shutdown hit. I have easily 2-3 dozen jigsaw puzzles in my home. And it's more of a winter activity than a summer activity for me, to be quite honest. But on like just a cold, icky winter Sunday, I like nothing better than pulling out a 1,000-piece puzzle and seriously not moving for 4 hours and just working a puzzle. And, you know, I love puzzles, but I love crossword puzzles. I love Sudokus. I love all that type of stuff. I like, you know, I like anything that it puts my brain in a different space. It makes my brain work differently than it does for work or for other parts of life. And so it is a happy space for me. So I have some that I can do in an afternoon. I've got a Jackson Pollock puzzle. It takes me weeks. I might be able to put in a piece an hour, you know?
Wow.
I mean, it's crazy. It's a crazy, crazy puzzle. So yeah.
Puzzles. All right.
Puzzles.
So, Jennifer, where can people get a hold of you? What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Okay, so I am trying to come back into my office, but so easiest way is always email. Our website, you can take a look at the firm's website. The firm is Petronzio Schneier. Our nickname is unpronounceable and unspellable. So, but it is ps-law.com. So it's a very simple web address. And my email is jcorso@ps-law.com. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. So, yeah.
Perfect.
And if you don't, go to the website and it's got the phone number on it. And,
right.
All that
Yeah. And we'll pop that in the show notes.
Yeah.
And I know that you had a special offer for our audience. Would you share that, please?
Sure. So we're talking about the employment. I think it was the employment audits I put, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. You did. Okay, excellent. And so my employment audits, once I talk to a client and I know what the scope of it is, I flat fee it. So it's not an hourly basis. And so I'm going to offer 20% off for anybody for this. And I'm just going to put that through the end of the year. So now if somebody just happens to be listening to this in January, February of next year and goes, no, I missed it, give me a call. We'll talk. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you. That's a very generous offer. I appreciate that you give that. And for those of you listening, if you come up with a cool name for Jennifer for her employment audit, you need to tell her. Yeah. You absolutely need to let her know. I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. My heart is so happy at this moment because I have found someone else who loves job descriptions. I do. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Lisa.